September 13, 1941, 3:15 in the morning. Bletchley Park, the lamps inside Hut 8 still burn. Outside, the English countryside sleeps under a low ceiling of clouds. A light rain taps against the windows. The gravel paths are slick. The old Victorian mansion stands in shadow, its towers barely visible against the night sky. From a distance, it looks peaceful, almost forgotten. Inside, it feels like the center of the war. Paper rustles. Typewriters chatter in uneven bursts. Cigarette smoke hangs thick in the air. A young woman in a wool sweater feeds a strip of punched paper into a humming machine. Across from her, a naval officer studies a sheet of numbers that look like nonsense. Columns and columns of letters, no punctuation, no mercy. Sub-Lieutenant Peter Hall rubs his eyes. He has not slept more than 4 hours in 2 days. He stares at the intercept laid out before him. The message came from the North Atlantic, German naval traffic, encoded, protected by the most feared cipher machine in the world, the Enigma. Somewhere far out at sea, U-boats move in packs. They wait in darkness, engines idling, listening for convoy reports. In Washington and London, officials know that if those submarines sever the Atlantic supply lines, Britain will starve. American factories will build ships and tanks, but they will never reach Europe. And here, in this drafty hut, a handful of civilians and mathematicians are trying to prevent that. Peter stands and walks to the window. Beyond the glass, he sees only black fields. It is hard to believe that what happens in this quiet estate may decide the fate of entire fleets. Behind him, a tall, thin man with restless energy paces the room. His tie hangs loose. His hair refuses to stay flat. Alan Turing stops mid-stride. "Run it again," he says softly. No shouting, no drama, just quiet urgency. The machine in the corner clacks into motion. It is not Enigma. It is a British creation, a heavy wired device built to test possible Enigma settings at mechanical speed. They call it the bomb. Its rotating drums spin, metal contacts click. It sounds like distant gunfire, muffled and steady. The German Navy has improved its procedures, extra rotors, tighter discipline. For months, convoy losses have risen. Ships vanish between Newfoundland and Liverpool. Oil tankers burn. Sailors cling to rafts in freezing water. Peter looks down at the sheet again. He tries to imagine the man who sent it. A German radio operator hunched over his key, tapping out letters into the night. He believes his message is safe, unbreakable. Peter whispers the crib they are testing, a likely phrase. Weather report, position group, something routine that might anchor the chaos. If they are wrong, the machine will grind for nothing. If they are right, the Atlantic may breathe a little easier. Across the room, Joan Clark folds her arms and watches the drums spin. She's calm on the surface, but her foot taps the floor. She knows what is at stake. She has seen the Admiralty reports. Tonnage sunk, lives lost, numbers that climb week after week. A bell rings. The bomb slows, stops. Peter leans forward. A possible setting. The room tightens. No cheers. Not yet. They move quickly, hands steady now. The settings are transferred to a replica Enigma. Rotors adjusted. Ring settings aligned. Plugboard cables inserted one by one. Alan steps aside. He does not touch the keyboard. He lets Peter do it. Peter inhales. He presses the first key. Letters appear on the lamp board. Not random. German, clear, structured, alive, coordinates, grid references, patrol lines, Wolfpack deployment. For a moment, no one speaks. Far out in the Atlantic, dozens of merchant ships plow through black water. Their captains trust their escorts. Their escorts trust their orders. None of them know that in a quiet English mansion, a code has just opened like a locked door. Alan finally exhales. Get it to the Admiralty. Joan gathers the sheets. A courier is already waiting outside. Within minutes, the decoded message will be on its way to London. From there, orders will ripple across the ocean. Convoys will turn. Destroyers will shift course. U-boats will wait in empty water. The rain continues to fall over Bletchley Park. Inside Hut 8, no one celebrates. They know this is only one night. Tomorrow, the settings will change. The enemy will tighten security. The puzzle will reset. But for now, somewhere in the Atlantic darkness, ships will pass through a gap that only a handful of unseen minds have carved. And most of the world will never know their names. October 17, 1941, just before dawn, 200 miles south of Iceland. The Atlantic is steel gray and restless. Convoy SC-48 moves east in long, patient lines. Merchant ships heavy with grain, fuel, and ammunition rise and fall in the swell. Their decks are slick with spray. On the bridge of the freighter, Silver Maple, Captain Robert Ellison grips his binoculars and scans the horizon. He sees nothing. That is what worries him. Below the surface, in the cold, green dark, U-boat U-553 holds position. Captain Lieutenant Carl Brenner studies his hydrophone report. Faint propeller beats, many of them. A convoy. He smiles, but it is a thin expression. He has been at sea for weeks. He knows the risk. Allied escorts have grown sharper. Aircraft patrol farther. Something has changed in recent months. Convoys do not blunder blindly as they once did. Still, the orders are clear. The wolf pack will assemble by nightfall. In London, at the Admiralty Operations Room, a decoded message from Hut 8 lies under a weighted ruler. It lists patrol lines, estimated positions, rendezvous points. The message is only hours old, but in the Atlantic, hours matter. An officer traces a pencil across a wall map. He calculates distance and speed. He issues a quiet instruction. Convoy SC-48 will alter course by 15 degrees north. No announcement, no explanation. A signal lamp flashes. Flags rise and fall. The ships adjust, one by one, like a slow-turning school of fish. On Silver Maple, Ellison frowns at the new heading. It feels unnecessary. The sea ahead looks clear. But he follows orders. He has learned not to question signals that come without context. He does not know that a German wolf pack waits precisely where he would have been. Back at Bletchley Park, Hut 8 is awake again. It is afternoon now. Weak sunlight filters through dusty panes. Peter Hall reads another intercept. The tone of the traffic has shifted. Frustration bleeds between the coded lines. A wolf pack reports empty ocean. Another requests updated coordinates. Alan Turing stands at a table covered in charts. He listens to the fragments as they are translated. His mind works ahead of the paper. They are searching, he says quietly. They expected contact. Joan Clark nods, which means we were correct. There is relief, but it is fragile. German naval Enigma uses more complex procedures than the Army. Extra rotors, stricter message discipline. Each success feels temporary, like balancing on a narrow beam over deep water. Out in the Atlantic, night falls fast. Brenner surfaces. His crew emerges into the cold air. Diesel engines rumble to life. He scans the horizon through his periscope housing. Nothing but waves and distant stars. He checks the latest wireless message. It directs him farther south. The convoy has shifted. Somehow it slipped the net. He feels irritation, then suspicion. How do they keep doing this? He does not yet consider that his own coded words may be betraying him. In Washington, President Franklin Roosevelt reviews shipping reports. The United States is not yet formally at war, but American destroyers escort convoys partway across the ocean. Factories in Detroit and Pittsburgh are running day and night. Trucks, aircraft parts, ammunition, all of it must cross the Atlantic. If the sea lanes collapse, the arsenal of democracy becomes a warehouse with no door. Roosevelt does not know the details of Hut 8. Few outside Britain do, but he understands that something has improved. Losses are still heavy, yet some convoys now pass untouched through waters once considered deadly. Back at Bletchley Park, Peter steps outside for air. The sky is pale blue. Leaves gather along the gravel path. For a moment, the estate looks like a university campus between terms. He thinks about the sailors he will never meet, men who stand watch in freezing spray, men who trust signals that arrive without explanation. He wonders if they sense an invisible hand guiding them. Inside, the machines spin again. The German Navy will introduce new cipher keys at midnight. The race resets. Every success today may vanish tomorrow. Alan returns to his desk. He sketches rotor permutations and neat pencil lines. He speaks little, but the pressure shows in the way he taps the eraser against the wood. This is not about cleverness, he says finally. It is about time. Time to break the key before ships are sunk. Time to read the ocean before the ocean claims another convoy. In the North Atlantic darkness, SC-48 steams on its altered course. The wolf pack prowls empty water behind it. For now, the lifeline holds. But both sides are learning, and the Atlantic is wide. May 3, 1943. North Atlantic. Early evening. The sea is rough, but visibility is clear. Convoy ONS-5 pushes westward from Liverpool toward North America. 43 merchant ships. Fuel, food, machinery. The usual cargo that keeps a war alive. On the bridge of the British destroyer HMS Duncan, Commander Michael Harrington studies his radar screen. Blips flicker. Some are friendly, some are not. He knows this convoy is being hunted. In Berlin, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz leans over a naval chart at headquarters. Reports arrive, one after another. Sightings, contact made, wolf packs. Converging. He believes this is the moment to crush Allied shipping once more. The Atlantic has been his battlefield for years. He trusts Enigma. He trusts that his submarine commanders are invisible. He does not know that inside Hut 8 at Bletchley Park the veil has thinned. Weeks earlier, British forces captured material from a damaged German weather ship in the North Atlantic. Code books, key tables. Not the entire secret, but enough to give the codebreakers a foothold. Combined with months of relentless analysis, it has allowed them to read U-boat traffic faster than before. Not perfectly, not always in time, but often enough. Inside Hut 8, Joan Clark reads a fresh decrypt aloud. Her voice is steady. Multiple boats ordered to converge on convoy. Grid reference matches ONS-5. Peter Hall feels a chill despite the warm room. He imagines the convoy far out at sea, unaware that more than 40 submarines are closing in. Alan Turing stands with arms folded. He has learned to mask emotion, but his eyes sharpen. "Get this to Western Approach's command immediately," he says. In Liverpool, the message arrives within hours. Escorts are reinforced. Additional destroyers and corvettes race toward the convoy. Long-range aircraft are dispatched. Orders are precise. They know where the submarines will attempt to form their lines. At sea, the first attack comes at night. A torpedo strikes a merchant ship. Flames leap into the sky. Men scramble into lifeboats. The convoy scatters briefly, then regains formation. Escorts charge toward the source, sonar pinging into the depths. Commander Harrington hears the echo. A contact below. He orders depth charges released. The explosions shake the water. Plumes rise. Oil spreads across the surface. For years, U-boats have hunted with near impunity. Now, something has shifted. Escorts anticipate their moves. Aircraft arrive overhead before dawn. Radar catches surfaced submarines that once hid in darkness. One by one, U-boats are forced under. Some do not return. In Berlin, Dönitz receives grim reports. Losses are mounting, boats destroyed, crews missing. He suspects improved Allied tactics, new technology. He does not yet grasp the scale of the intelligence breach. At Bletchley Park, exhaustion hangs in the air. The volume of intercepts is overwhelming. Machines run day and night. Women from the Naval Service feed punched tapes into bombs. Mathematicians argue over rotor settings. Tea grows cold on desks. Peter steps outside at dawn. The sky glows pink over the lawns. Birds sing as if the world is at peace. He holds a dispatch summarizing the past week. Dozens of U-boats sunk, convoys surviving. Shipping losses falling. The month will soon be known among German submariners as Black May. But there is no celebration in Hut 8. Joe knows that every advantage can vanish. The Germans may introduce a new cipher machine. They may alter procedures overnight. Victory in cryptanalysis is never permanent. Still, the tide feels different now. In the North Atlantic, ONS-5 limps into port. Some ships are missing. Families will receive telegrams. Yet most of the convoy has survived. Supplies will reach factories and front lines. On the dock, Commander Harrington watches cargo cranes swing into motion. He has no idea that men and women in a country house have been fighting beside him, armed only with logic and patience. Back in Bletchley Park, Alan returns to his desk. He studies a fresh intercept. The war is not over. The Atlantic remains dangerous, but the wolf packs no longer roam unseen. He pauses for a moment and looks around the hut. Young faces, tired eyes, quiet determination. No medals, no headlines. Only the steady hum of machines and the knowledge that somewhere beyond the horizon, ships are sailing through safer waters because of what was solved here. The Atlantic lifeline is holding, and the silence between the waves is no longer controlled by the U-boats. June 22, 1943. Washington, District of Columbia. Late afternoon. The air inside the British Embassy is thick with summer heat. Ceiling fans turn slowly. Papers are stacked in neat piles on a long oak table. American and British officers sit across from one another, sleeves rolled up, ties loosened. On the table lies a thin folder stamped with a single word. Ultra. The name is simple. The meaning is enormous. Captain William Carter of the United States Navy studies the briefing notes. He is careful not to show too much reaction. The British liaison officer speaks in measured tones. He does not describe how the codes are broken. He does not mention Hut 8. He does not speak the name Enigma out loud. He only explains the results. Convoys rerouted before attack. Wolf packs avoided. Submarines intercepted at precise coordinates. Carter understands at once. This is not guesswork. This is insight pulled straight from the enemy mind. Across the Atlantic, at Bletchley Park, life continues in quiet rhythm. The mansion looks unchanged. Tourists would see gardens and brickwork and assume nothing unusual. Inside the huts, however, the pace has quickened. American officers have begun to arrive. One of them, Lieutenant Margaret Reed from Naval Communications, steps into Hut 8 for the first time. She expected something grand. Instead, she finds narrow corridors, wooden desks, wires running across floors, and the smell of hot metal. Peter Hall greets her with a tired smile. "Welcome to the least glamorous battlefield in the war." Margaret listens as Joan Clark explains the daily cycle. Intercepts captured by listening stations along the British coast. Raw groups of letters delivered by motorcycle courier. Bombs configured to test likely rotor positions. Analysts checking and rechecking every result. Margaret notices how young many of them are. Students, teachers, linguists. People who, in another time, would be writing essays or solving exam problems. Now they are racing submarines. That evening, Margaret watches as a decrypt emerges. It reports U-boat refueling operations in the mid-Atlantic. Milk cows, the supply submarines that extend patrol range, are vulnerable when found. Within hours, the information is transmitted through secure channels. In the Atlantic, Allied aircraft alter course. A long-range patrol plane spots a surfaced submarine at dawn. The attack is swift. The supply line to several wolf packs is severed. Margaret feels the weight of it, a chain reaction set off by a few lines of decoded text. Back in Washington, Captain Carter presents a summary to Admiral Ernest King. The American Navy has been expanding rapidly, but coordination across the Atlantic remains complex. With shared intelligence, escort tactics improve. Hunter-killer groups form. Escort carriers patrol waters once dominated by submarines. Factories in the United States continue to produce ships at astonishing speed. Liberty ships slide down slipways in Baltimore and Portland. Each one represents steel, labor, and hope. Yet steel alone does not guarantee arrival. Intelligence does. At Bletchley Park, the pressure never eases. The German Navy introduces procedural changes, new key settings, occasional blackouts when traffic becomes unreadable. During those gaps, tension rises sharply. Peter remembers the long months in 1942 when losses spiked off the American East Coast. U-boats hunted near the shoreline, sinking tankers within sight of city lights. The public called it the second happy time for German submariners. He never wants to see those numbers again. One night in July, Hut 8 struggles with a new key. The bomb is run without result. Hours pass. Sweat beads on foreheads. Alan Turing studies the wiring diagrams with intense focus. It is a small change, he murmurs. It always is. Joan suggests a different crib, a routine phrase buried in naval messages. They reconfigure the machine. The drums spin. This time, the bell rings. Clear text appears. Relief sweeps through the room, quiet but profound. Another door reopened. Another day of advantage preserved. Margaret Reed steps outside into the cool night air. She looks up at the stars. Somewhere beneath that sky, destroyers escort convoys. Sailors scan the horizon. Pilots sweep the ocean in widening arcs. Most of them will never know about this mansion in Buckinghamshire. They will never know the names of the people who read the enemy signals before the enemy realizes they have been read. And that is the point. The secret must remain silent, even as it saves thousands. The Atlantic supply line now feels less like a gamble and more like a guarded highway. Dangerous, yes, but no longer blind. Still, the war is not finished. U-boats continue to sail. New technologies emerge on both sides. The contest between Cipher and Codebreaker remains alive. Inside Hut 8, the lights stay on. May 8, 1945. Early morning. Bletchley Park. A soft mist hangs over the lawns. The war in Europe is ending. Inside Hut 8, the atmosphere feels strangely subdued. There are no bands playing, no cheering crowds, only the familiar scrape of chairs and the shuffle of papers being stacked for archiving. Peter Hall stands by the window where he once stared into black fields and imagined distant convoys. He is older now, not in years, but in experience. The Atlantic charts that once filled the walls have been taken down, pins removed, lines erased. Joan Clark closes a file folder and ties it with string. Her movements are careful, almost ceremonial. Each document represents nights without sleep, calculations made under pressure, lives influenced by invisible decisions. Alan Turing sits at a desk that has grown worn at the edges. He turns a small Enigma replica in his hands. The machine that once seemed invincible now looks almost ordinary. Wood casing, metal keys, simple lamps. It is difficult to believe how much fear those rotors once carried. Across the Atlantic, ships move in steady traffic. The ocean lanes are crowded again, but not with wolf packs. Instead, cargo vessels and troop transport steam toward rebuilding efforts. The lifeline that once trembled under threat now hums with purpose. German U-boat commanders have received their final orders. Cease operations. Surface. Surrender. In ports across Europe, submarines sit quiet at dock. Crews disembark in silence. For years, they believed their coded messages were secure, that their movements were hidden by mathematics. They never imagined that in a quiet English estate, young men and women were reading those signals within hours. Peter remembers the early days of the war, the dread in naval reports, columns of tonnage lost, letters home that began with regret. He remembers nights when the bombs failed to find a solution, and the room felt heavy with unspoken fear. He also remembers the first time a convoy slipped through untouched because of a decrypt that arrived just in time. No one in Hut 8 ever saw the ship's turn. No one heard the relief in a captain voice when a dangerous grid square was avoided. Their battlefield had no smoke, no gunfire, only logic, persistence, and time. Margaret Reed, preparing to return to the United States, pauses at the mansion steps. She looks back once more at the modest buildings scattered across the grounds. She thinks about the thousands of American sailors who crossed the Atlantic safely in the past 2 years, about factories that never slowed because supply lines held. The partnership between Britain and the United States was strengthened here in rooms filled with wires and chalk dust. President Harry Truman will later remark that intelligence shortened the war by years. He will never describe how it was done. The details remain sealed, classified, hidden from public view. For decades, the story of Bletchley Park will remain a secret. Peter walks through Hut 8 one last time. The machines are quiet now. No spinning drums, no bells. Only the ticking of a wall clock. He runs a hand across a desk scarred by compass points and pencil marks. He thinks about the Atlantic in 1941, when U-boats prowled almost unchecked. He thinks about Black May in 1943, when the tide turned decisively. He thinks about convoys that carried food to Britain, fuel to armies, and equipment to the beaches of Normandy. All of it depended on a narrow margin of advantage. A few hours gained, a few messages read, a few course changes made in darkness. Outside, church bells begin to ring in distant towns. Victory in Europe Day. Joan joins Peter at the doorway. Neither speaks for a moment. Do you think they will ever know? Peter asks quietly. She considers the question. Perhaps one day. History will record the battles at sea, the names of admirals, the tonnage sunk and saved. It will describe the U-boat threat and the convoys that braved icy waters. But behind those visible events lies another story. A story of minds racing against rotors. Of women feeding punched tape into machines while storms raged beyond the horizon. Of mathematicians who understood that the Atlantic was not only a physical space, but a contest of patterns and probability. The codebreakers did not fire torpedoes. They did not stand watch on rolling decks. Yet their work silenced the U-boat threat in a way guns alone could not. By reading the enemy signals, they restored sight to ships that once sailed blind. As the sun rises over Bletchley Park on that quiet May morning, the estate looks ordinary again. Birds move across the grass. The mansion windows reflect pale light. The war in Europe is over. The Atlantic lifeline holds firm. And beneath the waves, for the first time in years, there's a different kind of silence.